All right, thanks for coming tonight. So we're going to do our Hope for Hormones talk, and we're going to start with what is expected of our hormones. So if you look at it from the female side, we look at birth, we look at puberty. I've got a 16-year-old going through that part. It's a bit of a challenge right now. So adulthood, pregnancy, having kids, hitting menopause, the end. So, what are some of the realities, though? A lot of times there's infertility. So that's becoming a bigger and bigger issue for couples, is being able to have a child. There's more in vitro fertilizations happening all the time. So it was 1 in 8, I believe it's now 1 in 6 couples are having a difficult time having children. So birth, we always think it's going to be this perfect thing. It tends to be a stressful event. So I work with a lot of babies. I work with a lot of moms during pregnancy, after pregnancy. Childbirth is rough on moms particularly. So, and a lot of hormone imbalances in puberty lead to birth control pills. So hormones are out of control. There's a lot of anxiety and depression and pain. So what's the first thing that your pediatrician will often offer? Birth control. So to try and regulate it. So adulthood, again, fertility issues, menopause. If you had a terrible hormone experience in puberty and in adulthood, usually your menopausal years are going to suck too, because it's a pattern. A hard menopause doesn't happen in your 50s and 60s. It's something that's going on in your 20s and 30s. So better to look at it earlier than to wait. So many women are just like, take out my uterus, take out my ovaries. How many body parts do you need to have removed in order to be healthy? So, it's something to think about. So, where do things go wrong? Well, if you look at your mom and your grandma, if you think about it, where you came from were the eggs that were in your mom when she was in your grandma. So what your grandma was doing will affect your genetics all the way going back. So if grandma smoked, if grandma drank, if grandma had cancer, if grandma was exposed to toxins and heavy metals and whatever, that's going to have an effect on you, because the uterine environment is super, super important. And what you were exposed to, what your mom was exposed to, and what your grandma was exposed to, all has an accumulative effect. We don't tend to think about that. So, infant mortality rates. We have the highest infant mortality rate of anywhere in the industrialized world. So that's something to think about when we spend the most on our health care of any country in the world. We spend $4.3 trillion every year on health care. But as a general rule, we are getting sicker. So all of these countries have a lower infant mortality rate. So more babies die in the United States per capita than these other ones. So again, something to think about. Girls are menstruating sooner than they ever have. There's more obesity than there ever has. And girls are having sex at an earlier age. Those all have effects on their hormones and their health in the long run. So it's become very normal to expect an abnormal cycle. So 30% of women have irregular periods, 80% have undesirable symptoms prior to the period, and 84% report painful cycles. So the menstrual cycle is supposed to be a normal function. It's not supposed to be something that you want to try and take something so you don't actually have it. But with the amount of pain that there is, that's often, one of the solutions. So birth control, 62% of women of reproductive years have been on birth control. 4 out of 5 have been on at one point in time. More than half of birth control users utilize it for reasons outside of not wanting to have a baby. So 31 for menstrual pains and cramps, 28 to regulate their cycle, 14% for acne, 4% for endometriosis, 11% for other reasons. So what is a hormone? What are these things that are so important for your health? So a hormone is a chemical messenger. That's what it is. It's your body being told by another part of your body what's going on. So it delivers critical information to cells to keep your body healthy and functioning properly. If you take a synthetic hormone, HRT, hormone replacement therapy, if you're taking birth control, that's going to interfere with your body's natural ability to create its own hormones, because the synthetics mimic what your body is trying to do naturally. So this is considered an endocrine disruptor. So why should we care? Endocrine disruptors interfere with reproduction. They also increase cancer risk. They also disturb the immune and nervous system function. So that's why that study back in 2000 that looked at hormone replacement therapy, and it showed that when women were on that for a long period of time, it increased the rates of cancer, and so many women came off of their hormone replacement therapy, including my mom, when she read that. The problem was they had no answers. So they came off, and then my mom floundered around for a long time. And, my dad said, you better find something, because, man, my mom was having a lot of, she was getting irritable and angry, and, and he's like, you've got to do something, because she had terrible menstrual cramps. She used to pass out when she was a teen. I remember, she would chase us around the house, and my mom had to have her nice pill because her hormones were so disrupted. She went to her primary care and said, doctor, I think I'm going crazy. He said, no, it's your hormones. And he put her on to a hormone replacement, and it helped to settle things down. But it did increase the chances of cancer, and it increased other things in her life. So I was in chiropractic school at the time, so we were able to find some bioidentical hormones, and then eventually we started getting her, and we tested her to see where her levels were actually at, and we're able to put her on more of an herbal piece, so trying to reduce that chance of cancer. But a lot of women, they went off of it because of the news, and then they had to go back on because of the symptoms, because there was no answer. It was like, well, we don't know, so go back on it, and they would do that a few years or a few months after. So what are some common hormonal issues? PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, PMS, lack of sex drive, fibroids, infertility, and horrible menopause. So what are the stats on this? And some of these are actually increasing. So PCOS is actually up to around 10 to 15% now. So 1 in 6 couples dealing with infertility. 75% of women report hot flashes during menopause. And I hear all the time, years of it. Menopause or perimenopause. Perimenopause can go on for 10 years sometimes. It can be a long and slow process. So what should the hormones look like? This is what they should look like. In your cycling years, every week is going to be different. So you should feel different. Guys, testosterone levels run pretty level. They're going to be more even keeled. They might be angry. They might put their, they might blow up, things like that. Guys tend to be aggressive, things like that with testosterone. But women's hormones fluctuate through the weeks. So there should be a difference in how you feel week to week. So many women think that something's wrong with them because their hormones go up and down. And they feel like crying one week and they feel pissed at the world the next week. Those are hormones. Sometimes they're imbalanced and sometimes they are balanced. But there should be these changes. So hormones through the lifespan. So kind of flatline till puberty. They go up and down through the cyclic years. They drop down at menopause. So you're going to have a drop of estrogen. You're going to have a drop of your progesterones. All of these hormones are going to dip down. They're still important though. You still need to have them. So this is our steroid hormone pathway. And when we look at it, all of these are based around that yellow cholesterol being the primary building block. So if you're on a cholesterol lowering drug, you're going to end up with these hormones being decreased. Because if you are taking a statin medication to lower your cholesterol, your body's going to struggle to make it because you're prohibiting your liver from actually being able to make this stuff. And our liver makes 85% of our cholesterol. So you are not able to affect your cholesterol but about 10 to 15% through diet. So I read of a guy who ate 472 eggs in 30 days and his cholesterol went down 20 points. So what do eggs have? Cholesterol, right? Saturated fats. His cholesterol actually went down. So he was not able to increase it by eating a high amount of cholesterol-heavy foods because our liver makes most of it. Cholesterol is essential for your body. Don't let your primary care say cholesterol is not important. This is one of many things that cholesterol is needed for. Cholesterol is also needed for your brain. So when you are taking a cholesterol-lowering drug, you're going to notice more brain fog, more trouble with memory, and you'll see a lot more elderly people struggle with dementias and things like that because they're not feeding their brain. What do babies need? They need fat. That is what our brain is mostly made of. So what is breast milk? Saturated fat and cholesterol to feed the brain. Old people need the same thing. We all need that. We still need it. So taking a statin can lower those numbers, but it can cause a lot of side effects too. So when we look at this, there's a couple different areas we want to look at. This is our stress pathway through here. So pregnenolone is kind of the mother hormone. It's what everything starts from. And then in the liver, these things are converted down. So it converts down to progesterone and then 17-hydroxy, and then it goes into our stress hormones. So if you're under a ton of stress, sometimes your hormones will be shunted this way. And you'll see it in your cortisol pattern. Now, what is cortisol? Cortisol is a hormone that is related to stress. So it's going to be highest in the morning. It should be highest in the morning. And then it should decrease as the day goes through for your energy. If you're chronically stressed, you might have it way up here, where you wake up and you're anxious and you feel a lot of anxiety through the day. And then if you're fatigued, if it's been stressful for a long time, you're taking care of a sick spouse, you've got stress in your life, divorce, or you lose a job, or my wife, we were taking care of my mother-in-law last year. She had cancer. She was living in our house. That put a ton of stress on our family. So my wife's hormones took a major dip because she was taking care of 2 kids, homeschooling, and taking care of a sick mom. So it's really important to try and make sure that this stays in this better pattern. Sometimes we'll see someone's cortisol pattern start way up in the morning, so they wake up too early. Their brain is revving like crazy. They might wake up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, cannot go back to sleep. And then it crashes in the afternoon. You can just see it just tank down here. So they're exhausted. They might have to take that afternoon nap. They might need that coffee in the morning, in the afternoon, and they've got nothing left at nighttime. And then it goes back, and they're again up too early. So this is a major piece. You can test this through urine testing. So it's no wonder that hormone problems are such a common problem. So we look at things like breast cancer. When we look at some of that urine testing, you can actually measure some of the other estrogens. There's actually 10 different estrogens. So we look at this sheet right here where you can test it through blood, and these are 3 estrogens right here: estrone, estriol, and estradiol. Those are the ones you can test through blood. But those break down to other estrogen products in the liver. So these then go and break down to the 16-hydroxy, 4-hydroxy, 2-hydroxy, and you'll see more stuff onto the other side if you were to do what's called a Dutch test. And we want to see these estrogen metabolisms in the right ratios. So this red pattern right here at 38% should be between 7 and 11%. So this is actually showing an increased risk of cancer, particularly breast cancer, for this female. So you can actually start to see, is there a chance to heighten the risk of cancers? So that's super important to try and find early on, because most cancers have been there for 8 to 10 years before they're actually detected. So, what are the treatment options for cancers? Radiation and chemo, right? And my dad had colon cancer, didn't know about. He took care of my mom. She was sick for a long time, and he didn't get a colonoscopy for 10 years. And then one day, his colon burst, and they found stage 3 colon cancer. So I flew out to Ohio, and they were going to start him on chemo. And when we walked in, what was the first thing at the desk? A whole thing of donuts for the patients. Now, what do you not want to feed cancers? Sugar. Yeah. So how do you find cancer on a PET scan? You inject glucose into the body, and those cancer cells eat it up, and because they're radioactive, it goes to the cancer cells. That's how you find cancer on a PET scan. Inject radioactive sugar in there, and you'll find where the cancers are. So the last thing you want to give a cancer patient is sugar. But because that's the treatment, and I asked the doc, what should we do dietarily? Oh, diet doesn't matter. Eat whatever you want. Ice cream? Oh, sure, if that makes him feel good. It's like, wow. So you're feeding cancers. Our food is fuel. It's either going to be a poison or it's going to be nutrient dense. So fortunately, they were able to remove the cancer. He couldn't tolerate the chemo. He did some radiation, and we've been able to do some other kind of testing. He's not doing any of that stuff anymore. He's on a lot of different supplements, and he does pickleball 5 or 6 days a week. He dances 5 or 6 days a week. He walks 3 to 6 miles a day. So I think he's more active than my entire family. So out in Ohio. So he'll be 80 next year. So he's doing very, very well. So what are the answers? If it's a problem, cut it out. So, I think gallbladder surgery is the most common surgery, but for a long hysterectomies, and removal of the uterus. Unfortunately, that is just so common. So women often have, they're super excited to sometimes have a hysterectomy because it's the end of the pain. They look at that as like, thank God it's done. That thing's out of there. I don't have to worry about, fibroids or ovarian cysts that burn. Imagine. I had a lady in today who was in the ER 2 days ago, and she said it felt like she was going into labor, terrible pains. So it's super frustrating. So we're supposed to have hormones. We're supposed to have them fluctuate. So where are hormones produced? The ovaries, the adrenal glands of the kidneys, and our fat tissue. So it's one of the reasons why women have more fat tissue than guys is when the ovaries start to shut down around menopause, the adrenals and the fat tissue is going to continue making estrogens. If you can't get rid of the estrogens, though, and they recycle and stay in your body, they're supposed to be taken out by the liver. They'll remain in your fat tissue and you'll struggle to lose weight because your body will hold on to that unless you can figure out a way to get your liver to detoxify and break down and metabolize your estrogens. Menopause. I understand now, menopause is just puberty's evil older sister. So, you may not have known, October 18th is... So, and it's to raise awareness of menopause. The stigma, which I don't even know what that means, since a third of a woman's life is in menopause, and to highlight support. The problem with this is, even though a third of your life is spent in menopause, it is the least researched topic of all. They have done a terrible job with researching this time period. And, the symptoms that go along with perimenopause are dramatic. Irregular periods, vaginal dryness, hot flashes, night sweats, sleep problems, mood changes, anxiety, depression, ADHD, brain fog, memory, hip and shoulder pain. That's kind of interesting. Insulin, blood sugar difficulties, weight gain, thinning hair, flushed face, dry eyes, migraines, recurrent UTIs. So if we look at some of these, vaginal dryness is a big problem. And the reason is, as the estrogen levels go down, they have historically been a huge contributor to the suppleness and the fluid. So as they dry up, because the estrogens dip, a lot of times you're going to end up using different creams and things like that. So as hormone levels reduce, you're going to see more irritation, thinning of the vaginal tissue, painful sex. So you can sometimes mistake a UTI for vaginal dryness because it's kind of in the same area. So if it's burning, sometimes it's hard to tell which one is which. So sometimes you can mess up your gut by taking a bunch of antibiotics when it's actually something like this going and not UTIs. So they should be testing your urine to actually see that there is an infection there. So hot flashes, night sweat, flushed face, it's the most common symptoms that women struggle with. So, it's been the hallmark of menopause for many years. Despite the commonality and the direct association with the decrease in estrogens, the response is highly correlated to high blood sugar issues, insulin resistance, and cortisol elevation. So if you have a lot of stress, you can get hot flashes from that. If your blood sugar is too high and you're running into pre-diabetes or diabetes, that can also create some of these hot flashes, night sweats. 2 is anger, depression, anxiety, ADHD. So declining estrogen has an effect on serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA, and cortisol, all different adrenal hormones. Sleep issues, stress, GI infection can also make this problem worse too. So brain fog. So again, when estrogens decrease, it affects, we have estrogen receptors in every part of the body, all over the body. So it's not just ovaries or in the adrenals. Brain fog and menopause. So as estrogens decrease, you're going to see a lot more brain fog, distractedness. So 1 in 5 women will actually leave the workplace because they feel that they cannot keep up with their younger counterparts because they feel like they can't concentrate on anything. So a lot of times there is a hormonal imbalance that's creating some of that. It's like squirrel. So, there's along with that. Hip and shoulder pain. So the role of estrogen and progesterone in rotator cuff disease or hip bursitis. So sometimes if you have a sudden onset of a condition of the shoulder, you tear your rotator cuff out of the blue at night, or you end up with your hip hurts one day and there's no explanation for it, and you're getting adjusted and it's not clearing up. It might be wise to look at some of the hormone levels that are going along with that. So this is a study that was looking at these receptors and rotator cuff issues. So, like I said, a lot of women and men, but in this case for women, struggle with their blood sugar. More and more people are on diabetes medications, on insulin, and that plays a huge role in increasing the risk for, abdominal obesity, hypertension, high levels of triglycerides, type 2 diabetes. So they all play into what's called metabolic syndrome. So what are some of the answers that have been done in the past? So anyone ever heard of Premarin? Okay. So do you know where that comes from? Horses. Exactly. Yes. So, yeah. So does that look like you? So yeah, Premarin is pregnant mare urine. That's what it stands for. So when they were giving, they didn't want to give bioidenticals because then you can't patent it. You can't patent a bioidentical. But you can patent, pregnant, horse urine where you extract the hormones out of it and then give it to women. So, so if you start to stamp the ground, there might be, you might be taking too much. So, but what it did was it actually increased cancers because, horse estrogens are massively stronger than women's hormones. So it increased cancer rates. So that's one of the reasons, they're looking at more of the bioidenticals. So, not the best solution. So what can we do? The Wellness Way, we believe that your body doesn't make mistakes. There's a reason you feel the way you feel. Our bodies are not dumb. That's why I say cholesterol is important for the body. That's why, autoimmunity. Your body is trying to actually get rid of damaged tissue. It's not the body is making a mistake. It's, attacking our body that has healthy tissue. No, it's trying to get rid of unhealthy tissue. So we look at the body as a Swiss watch, being that the nervous system is the key component because it talks to the rest of the system, right? Our nerves, they go from our digestive system, talk and will have an effect on our skin health. So you could have eczema or rashes here for the skin, integumentary system, but the problem is actually coming from the gut. So you could have a bacterial overgrowth or a yeast overgrowth or a parasite, and you might show with, massive itching all over your body. But it's actually a digestive problem. So where you may have the symptom is not always where the problem is. You have to find where that is. And so often the testing that's done never asks why. Why am I feeling this way? What created this? What created my autoimmune condition? What created my, hormone issues or my, my colitis? So we look at something called the fireman and carpenter principle. So we look at the fireman as more like the medical approach. So carpenter is more as the wellness way approach. So there's a time and a place for both. So when I was 17, I was in a car that got hit by a train. I needed the medical approach because they had to use the jaws of life to get my door open. They thought I was paralyzed for a period of time. I started with back pain. Surprise, surprise. So had 7 years of back pain. And it wasn't until my best friend went to chiropractic school and he adjusted me 3 or 4 times over a long weekend when I was visiting him that I kind of got my first taste of, the carpenter. So I had been through PT and massage and nutrition and exercises, and I still had that pain. And I had never felt as good after getting adjusted like that. It really freed me up and convinced me to go to chiropractic school. So in terms of, if we car accidents or let's say you have a heart attack. So, that's another time for the fireman approach. They're going to be the best ones to keep you alive. But when you're stabilized and you say, I want to change my life so I never have a heart attack again, what is the answer that they tell you? Well, be on these statins and these blood pressure meds for the rest of your life. That will maintain it. Those also have a ton of side effects though. And they have not been shown to actually increase our longevity. So that's for another talk. But, so what are some things we can do? The Wellness Way approach is going to say okay, if your house is on fire, who do we need? We need the fireman. We got to put out the fire, right? But who do we want to rebuild it? I would say I wanted this approach. So that's why I started looking at testing my body in ways that, I could never get done with my primary care doc. It was always the same tests. A CBC, a CMP, look at your cholesterol, and yep, that's fine, out the door. So it was the same thing every single year until it wasn't. And then it would be, oh, your cholesterol is too high. Well, we got to put you on a cholesterol med, or your blood pressure is too high. Why? Why is that? So what are some ways that you can start to take care of yourself? Take time for self-care. So massage, yoga, getting outside, being physically active. Nutrition is the key. You have got to eat better. As a country, we call it the standard American diet, the SAD diet. So because 75% of Americans are obese. So and our kids are becoming more obese too. So we've got to look at food as medicine, not just something that we put in our face. So eat foods. What's a good one? Maca. So you can do like a maca powder. So you can put that into smoothies. You can put it into a lot of different things. But it has fats, proteins, polysaccharides, and it helps increase all female hormones. So if you are perimenopause or menopausal with those hormone drops, this is a way to naturally help support that. What are some other great hormone supporting foods? Dark chocolate. Not Nestle's, not Hershey's, dark chocolate. So that has a ton of benefit. Hemp, dates, cherries, grapes, organic wine, I like that. Maca powder, coconut products, essential oils, cacao, number one source of magnesium. It has tryptophans. It has a lot of beneficial pieces. It contains serotonin, helps release oxytocin. Don't heat it up though. All the benefits are destroyed at high heat. What are some other ways? Avoid endocrine disruptors, pesticides, birth control, plastics, arsenic, non-stick cookware, mercury, dioxins. So the Wellness Way does 4 health challenges per year. So right now we're doing a Sleep Well challenge for the month of October. So we're going to do a no sugar January after we've eaten Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. I think it's a good time for a detox from sugar. So we do a no sugar January. And we'll do a talk on that. We'll have a bunch of material, and there's a Facebook group you can be a part of if that's some interest to you. In April, it is a detox month where we look at what we can do to detox from foods that are inflammatory, but also household products too. So try and look at that. And then July is increase your protein challenge. So getting more dietary protein in. Most women do not get enough proteins in. So another one, get adjusted. So incidentally, that's Dr. Patrick Flynn. He's going to be coming for our health and wellness event out of Green Bay, Wisconsin, next Saturday at the Country Club, if you want more info on that. So he's the founder of the Wellness Way. There's over 80 different clinics around the country. We're the only one in New Hampshire. So he's out of the Midwest. There's a lot more out there. Get tested. So figure out why your body is behaving the way it is. What is the trigger? Is it a gut problem? Is it a mold problem? Is it a heavy metal problem? Is it a food allergy problem? Is it a stress problem? So some testing that you can do. This is a typical blood test. What we can see here is this woman's ferritin levels are amazingly low, and her vitamin D levels are extremely low too. So blood sugar is not too bad, but this is something that, again, a lot of times you have to ask to have it run. Your vitamin D, I see it low on everybody unless they're supplementing, and it doesn't matter if it's August or January. In January, it's always low, but it's shocking how low people's vitamin D levels are here in this state, but also in Florida. There's 5 different Wellness Way offices down in Florida, and they say the same thing. Even though they have access to so much sun, their vitamin D levels are super, super low. Vitamin D is so important for your immune system, cancer prevention, autoimmune, hormones. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. It helps make those steroid hormones. This is the first page of a Dutch test, dried urine total comprehensive hormone test. So it's the urine test where we can look at that cortisol pattern and see where the stress levels are at. So this is one way of measuring through the day. And we can see, this lady's cortisol is super, super low through here. So it should be in the green range about halfway. And, hers is not even registering on the normal scale. Second page. So if we look at what you can test with blood, that's going to be this top portion. What you can't test with blood is down through here. This is all the breakdown of those estrogens that I was talking about, where we have more estrogens than what most people are aware of. And you can see the breakdown to see how your body is metabolizing those, see if your liver is functioning properly. This will give you a better idea of how the estrogens are functioning, how your progesterone is, if you're going too far along the testosterone, the androgenic, the male hormones, if those are too high, you're going to be set up for PCOS, endometriosis. So you can measure all that through blood and urine and get a more complete picture. So if you're not a patient, this is what we offer on our first visit. So we offer to go over your past test results, your last 2 years worth of lab results, if you have them at Cheshire or wherever. We'll do full spine x-rays, we'll do a consult, and we do an exam. And when you come to this, we discount that down to $99. So, and if you are a current patient, we can always set up something a little different because some of you have already had x-rays and stuff. So, all right. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.